Welcome to Bomke's Farm. My name's Kyle Schutt with Discovery Education. I've got my friend Justin here with me.
Hi guys.
We'll meet and learn. Whoa, we've got technology too. We'll meet and learn from Justin all the great stuff happening inside of this cab later in the show. We had the opportunity last fall to come here to Bomke's Farm and to learn all about the harvest season. We're going to talk later on about the new planting going on right now in the spring, and of course, we'll talk about Earth Day, which was just yesterday. Can't wait for you to join us. So let's go hear from Brian Bomke, the owner and operator of Bomke Farms.
Hi, I'm Brian Bomke. Welcome to Bomke's Farm. Our family roots run all the way back to President Abraham Lincoln, who was our family's lawyer back from my third and fourth generation grandfathers. The farm consists of 4,500 acres of crops. 60% of that is corn, 40% of that is beans, and another 100 acres of pasture. We have approximately 42 head of cattle. We also have 14,000 Christmas trees and 10 acres of pumpkins. Today you're going to meet some of my family members, my wife Kathy, my son Justin, my son-in-law Jason, and Ed, our agronomist. So come follow me and I'll show you the farm. Today we're harvesting soybeans. Jason, my son-in-law, is running the combine. Once he gets a full hopper, it will be taken to the semis, dumped on the semis, which we take to the local elevator. My son-in-law used to be a CAT engineer for Caterpillar, which helps him a lot understand all the technology we have in our combine now. So we're going to join Jason here to see what kind of technology we're using on the farm.
I'm Jason Podarny, and I'm part owner-operator of Bomke Farms, and today we're harvesting soybeans. I became part of Bomke Farms about 4 years ago. Previously to that, I was a hydraulic test engineer, but grew up as a farm kid. So farming has been in my blood ever since I was born. I would ride in the tractor and the combine with my dad every time I got the chance. Every time I was at school, I hoped to come home and something would be going on. I would like to show you a little of the combine that we're sitting in today. This is a basic machine. You have your steering wheel and you have your joystick that makes it go forward and backward depending on how fast you can go. I know there's a lot of buttons on here and they all do specific things, but they're all important to running this machine correctly. Up here you can see the monitor that I use to drive the machine very straight. The monitor down here shows the combine, what it is doing, and all my set points. Different crops require different set points as far as sifting out the fines, the big pieces and the little pieces, so all we get is pure grain in the tank. In the corner here, we have another monitor that shows me the power and the fuel that I'm using. We like machines that are very fuel efficient around here on this farm. So thanks for joining me today.
So we're here inside the Bomke's Farm, and we had the opportunity to see the harvest season, to learn about the technology, such cool stuff going inside of that tractor, that's for sure. And of course, I love that you ended that segment with we really like fuel efficient vehicles here on the farm because it's so appropriate. Earth Day, Earth Week, we know students all across the country and really around the world have been celebrating, they've been downloading activities, all kinds of fun stuff. We're excited that you're learning with us today. So we're gonna have a lot of fun, ask some questions, get some answers out there. I think we have a challenge lined up for later on in the show as well. So thanks for hosting us today, guys. This is
welcome.
This is great. Excited to be here. So I did a little bit of research. Of course, we mentioned we were here in the harvest season. We had the opportunity to see what that was like. It's now early springtime, lots of new planting going on, so kind of a different shift for you. But in between, I was learning about, what is this event going to be like? And what is it like to be on a working farm? One of the things, I don't know if you saw this or not, but the UN General Assembly declared 2015 the International Year of the Soils. So that's really appropriate, relevant to both Earth Day and what we're learning about today. And so if you have questions about that or anything else as you go throughout the show, we encourage you, use that questions box just below your media player, below that viewing window on the website there. Send us your questions. We'd love to answer some of those later in the show. And of course, if you are on Twitter, we'd love for you to share your questions. Use that hashtag ScienceOfSoilVFT. #ScienceOfSoilVFT. And not only questions, we love learning and seeing what your learning environments look like. So if you're in a classroom or an auditorium, wherever you're watching from today, take a picture, tweet to us. We love to go back after the show and see what it looked like for,
right.
for everybody on the other side of the camera, right?
That's right, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to jump right in. We have lots of great questions that have been coming on over the past couple days, too, because we've had this open. So, Jason, thanks again for being here. One specific question that kept coming in, and of course even more now that we saw the technology in the tractor, but how is technology so important in the harvest process, specifically around the soybeans and that kind of thing?
Well, that's a great question, Kyle. There's a lot of technology in that combine. It is a huge machine, and you can maneuver very well. You can ask Brian, it's pretty hard to pry me out of that seat because I love driving it.
That's right.
But there's technology to keep it straight, driving with GPS, keep the head on the ground so we're cutting real close.
And in fact, there's technology right now that they're seeing. What is that they're taking?
They're looking at a yield map, and that combine can produce a map showing us where the most grain came out of the field. So the green areas are good on the left of the screen there, and the red are bad. And on the right, we also record, like the season now, what varieties we plant. So the yellow is one color, the green is another, and the purple is another, and you can see that one variety did a little better than the other. But how this relates to the nutrients is we can tell definitely how much nutrient we took out of the soil. If we have a good crop, we need to replace more nutrients in the soil. If we have a bad crop, we might not have to replace as many. And that way we don't overdo it and waste our budget either.
Yeah, I've been learning so much about tech. You think about a farm, you don't always go to the technology angle, but it's really infiltrated our everyday life. And you mentioned the GPS technology. When I had the chance earlier to ride in the tractor, he was mentioning how the GPS could keep not only the tractor straight, but whatever you're towing behind it often has a GPS so that they can work kind of together in tandem to plow that straight line, which is it's just incredible when you think about mapping and farming. You would have never necessarily put those together.
That's right.
So all right, well, lots of other questions coming in. Let's go ahead to one from Ashley, and Ashley's at Eisenhower Elementary. Hi, Ashley. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Ashley wants to know, how do you know when it's time to plant different crops in different seasons? Right?
Well, actually, we plant our corn, soybeans in the spring season, and there's really three factors we consider before we take the planters to the field. One is we want to know what the soil temperature is at the 4-inch level. We want 50 degrees or better for corn, 55 degrees or better for soybeans. That way we have proper germination of the seed. The next thing we like to have dry soil. We want good soil to seed contact. We don't want to have any compaction around the seed or in the field itself. The third thing is we want to go by the calendar a little bit. Our last killing frost is around April 15th in this area. We try to plant the middle of April, and the corn usually emerges anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks. So by the time our corn emerges out of the ground, we're way past the frost date. After we plant our corn, we usually switch our planters over to our soybeans. Our soybeans are usually planted somewhere around the last part of April to the 1st of May.
So there's a lot of science going on here. You mentioned a little bit about the planting season. So you're using data, both climate data and so forth, but also kind of the year-to-year, the weather data, how things are adjusting and so forth.
You could have warm weather into March, but we wouldn't want to go out there and plant into March. You could have 50-degree ground temperature, but then you take the chance of being frosted. So we kind of got to follow the counter a little bit.
Yeah, so it's really a balance of the two.
Right.
Very interesting. Lots of science here, as you're going to learn as we go throughout here. So more questions coming in. Eliana from Legacy Classic Christian School, she wanted to know, how does crop rotation help the soil?
Eliana, on our farm, we do a corn soybean crop rotation, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Soybeans are a legume-type plant. A legume-type plant takes the nitrogen from the air, takes it down to the plant in the root system, where it fixes nitrogen into the soil. Well, that nitrogen is then there for the corn crop the following year. So that's the reason we go from soybeans to corn. The corn plant has amazing ability to produce organic matter. The average corn crop can produce anywhere from 1/2 to 2 tons of organic matter per acre per year, whereas the soybean can only produce 1/3 of a ton per acre per year. So by rotating into corn, we're adding a lot of organic matter back into the soil, which we all know helps soil erosion. The third thing we want to do, we want to make sure we break up the disease cycle. If we were to plant corn after corn, soybean after soybean for multiple years, sooner or later the disease pressure would be so high that it'd be hard to handle. So we want to break the soybean or the disease cycle of the soybean and the corn plant. So that's why we rotate back and forth.
Okay, thank you. Great questions and great answers as well. Mr. LaFoon's class, more on a personal level here, is it hard to be a farmer, and what kind of chores do farmers do?
I would say it is hard being a farmer. It's a love for the lifestyle, I guess you could say. That going out, doing the chores every morning. We raise cattle that we feed every day. We have goats, we have chickens, and the common household pets, dogs and cats. But everyone works together here on the farm, so the chores don't seem like they are chores to us.
Everybody chips in.
Everyone
A shared
chips in.
responsibility. I like
That's
that.
right.
What would you say, Brian?
Well, with all the technology we have now, we can go later and later in the night, and it really is tough to decide when to shut down, because we have tractors now that can go all through the night with the lights we have, with the GPS ability we have to steer them at nighttime, and it's really a, it's a long day. It's a long day sometimes.
It is, it is. Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing with us. We're going to learn a little bit now about the harvest season, specifically Justin, another of your family members, your brother, right? He's going to,
Yes,
brother-in-law,
yeah.
sorry. He's going to go ahead and share with us how often, how many people work here, how many hours a day, a little bit of information like that. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Hi, my name is Justin Bomke, and I'm the owner and operator of Bomke Farms. Today I'm going to show you what harvest looks like around our farm. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a farmer, and today I finally have the chance, and I want to show you what it's all about. Behind me is a John Deere combine. The combine is what harvests the grain out in the field. Corn will enter the front on the head here, it'll go through the machine, and then the corn will end up at the top of the cab. From there we dump it onto the grain cart, which further dumps it onto trucks, which sends it to our storage facility, which I can show you later. We start harvest usually in the first week of September, and it typically lasts us 6 weeks. We have 7 guys that work on the farm, and we usually work for about 14 hours a day. The combine will hold 400 bushels in the hopper, and it can typically do 100 to 120 acres a day. So you've seen the harvest process. The next step is it comes here to our grain facility behind me. When the grain arrives here, we weigh it in, we dump it in our pit, and then from there it goes to our dryer to be dried. Once we're ready to sell, we sell the grain to our local elevators, who buy the grain for anything from ethanol to manufactured goods. What's interesting about this facility is it's a complete 24-hour facility. We have cameras set up that we can see what's going on even if we're not around. Beside me here is our turbo till. We use this to fracture the soil in the fall to prepare the ground for the spring planting season. So in the residue I've got here, there's nutrients that's left over from this year's crop that needs to be broken down and released back into the soil so it's available for next year's crop. And you can see by chopping this up with the chopping corn head and with the turbo till, it sizes the residue so microbes can eat it and break it down quicker so it's available for next year.
Well, welcome back. We've got Justin here now. Justin, thanks for joining us.
Glad
You
to be
mentioned
here.
a little bit about the technology there. Can you enlighten us a little bit more about the technology that's used here on the farm?
Yeah, so I think you guys saw in the video there, we have a grain system that runs 24 hours during the day. And we need to see what's going on no matter what time of day it is. So it's important that we can see. So we have a camera system set up, and we have an iPad app. So with the iPad, we can see what's going on no matter what time it is. So
Pretty
yeah.
slick. Hopefully
a
that
great tool.
saves a few hours of sleep, perhaps?
It does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, no, that's limited on a farm often.
Yes, it does.
Well, we have so many great questions. Virginia, Philadelphia, Montana. Thank you for the pictures. Been seeing great stuff coming in on Twitter. So much excitement and questions about this event. So let's jump right back into some more of these questions here. Justin, you mentioned a little bit about tilling and specifically turbo tilling. I'm wondering, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so in the fall, we do what they call vertical tillage. And what vertical tillage is, it's basically a tool with a series of discs, and it's kind of like a pizza cutter, right? So it'll roll across the field, and it makes the residue into really small pieces. And in doing so, it creates a lot of surface area, so the microbes can start eating from all different sides of that. And that's important because this year's residue is next year's nutrients. So the sooner they eat that stuff, they can release the nutrients inside, and it's available for next year's crop.
Wow,
Yeah.
you're a wealth of knowledge here, and in fact, that's some of the questions we're wondering. How did you get to be where you are? So, what did you study to continue to learn about farming?
I went to ag science. Yep,
Okay.
I went to a 4-year university, so
Okay.
I studied ag science. Yep.
Agriculture and,
Yep.
and science. Okay, great. I love that. So, that if you're interested, there's
Yeah, there you go.
definitely a pathway. I love
Great
that.
opportunities there. Yeah.
More interesting questions. How tired are you every day, and how early do you start your morning? I think a little bit of those farmer hours, rumors are going around. There.
Yeah.
So is it early?
It can be pretty early.
Okay.
Depending on the time of the year, between 6:30 and 8. Depends how busy we are, but we work a lot of evening hours, like Dad said earlier. So it's a lot of late nights, but we do work some early mornings too. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Wow. Okay. Well, we've got so many questions coming in, but before we started today, you mentioned that you had a challenge for the students. Though,
I
right?
did, yeah.
You do?
I
Okay.
do, yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and share that challenge with them?
Okay, students. So if a bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds and the combine can hold 400 bushels in the hopper, how many tons can the combine hold?
All right, we'll leave that up there for just another minute. Again, kind of absorb this, and what we want you to do after you find out the answer, submit that in that questions box down low, or of course you can tweet that as well. 1 bushel of corn is 56 pounds. The Bumke's combine holds 400 bushels, so how many tons of corn is in Bumke's corn hopper? So that's the combine hopper. So that's the question. The challenge is out there, right?
Yep,
we'll
it's
give you a
out
few
there.
minutes to figure that out. And while we do, we want to talk a little bit more about the learnings, because this whole operation here, you're learning year after year
Yep.
and day by day. And so to do that, we're going to learn a little bit more from Ed, who's your agronomist.
Yep.
And we had
Right.
the opportunity to learn from him last fall. So let's go ahead and look at that.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm an agronomist, which means that I work with plants to try and help their nutrition and anything that may stop them from producing the best yields. So one of the ways that we are able to figure out what amounts of nutrients that we use and how do we balance that nutrition correctly for the crop, we take soil samples. And it's easily done where after the crop's off, we go in, we pull core samples, and we run that through a lab, and it gives us a reading of how much of the nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium, what kind of pH the soil is, and then that allows us in different areas of the field to fertilize according to that either loss of nutrients that we have in that area that the crop has pulled off, or if it needs to be built up so we can have additional yield. A healthy corn plant is really above the ground a mirror image of the root system we have below the ground. The roots are very responsible for absorbing all the nutrients out of that soil and utilizing the nutrients that each of the farmers apply in the correct proportions to create a very healthy, strong plant that produces a lot of yield. Let's take a look at those root systems now. So with a lot of root system, it's mining the soil of those nutrients, taking up moisture. As it brings in the moisture, it brings in nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium that builds strength into the plant to be able to resist diseases, insect onslaught, anything of that nature that would reduce the yield and reduce the plant's health. I've worked with the Bumke farm for the last 7 years, and when we do get off these great yields, and this is a very good yielding year, we're removing a lot of nutrition in that grain as it comes off the field, whether it's corn or soybeans, and that needs to be replaced so that we continue to have great yields, great healthy plants for the future.
So we'd like to welcome Ed Corrigan to the show now. Thank you for being here, Ed. Welcome.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, so you're the Bumke's farm agronomist. What does that mean?
So a farm agronomist is really the science of soil and being able to optimize the yields that are coming off of each field to assist the grower with as much profit as we can accomplish for him.
So what do you study to be an agronomist? What
So
kind
there's-
of schooling did you have?
So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of chemistry, there's some crops classes, obviously, soils labs, and of course speech class, which I wasn't really good at.
Well, you're doing great so far. In addition to that, I think we also saw in that previous segment where you mentioned chemistry has to be so important. I mean, you mentioned phosphorus. What are the other elements that come into play every day for you?
So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, we're starting to see sulfur, calcium, magnesium become very important in the production of crops across the U.S.
So the middle school students watching that periodic table of elements, they should acquaint themselves with that, huh?
That's correct.
That'll be helpful. So let's go on here. You mentioned yield, and that that's really what you're striving for, is to increase the yield. Can you just give us another quick definition? What does that mean? What is yield?
So yield is really the production that a grower gets and the harvest that comes off of each acre, and it's what he's able to sell. When he's able to sell quite a lot, he makes more money, so it's really trying to optimize that yield to get good profits.
Great. So you guys are working together all the time. And Brian, I'm wondering, how do you know what nutrients are in your soil that are best for the plants that you're working with?
Well, what we do, we take a soil test, and that soil test is based every 4 years on a 4-year rotation. And what we do, we go out there and we take 5 samples from 2.5 acres area. And when we do all this with GPS technology, so we can actually go back to that same spot 4 years later. And after we get that back from, we send that to the soil lab, and once we get that back to the soil lab, we sit down with Ed and we discuss what we need to change in our program.
So what are we seeing right here? What is that specifically?
So that's an overhead shot of one of the fields, and it's depicting the different colors, depict a different soil type. And by soil types, some of them are more productive than others, so we can arrange the amount of production we expect out of that soil type. The better soil types, we push a little harder, put a little more population, a little additional nutrition. Once we've done that, then we start to take each of the layers of the soil test values of whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium, and we put it into a colored map, as you see here, and it distinguishes the red being the areas that we really need to apply quite a bit more nutrition. It's quite low, and the areas that are dark green, the nutrition is a lot higher, and so we don't need to apply as much, and that makes for a more profitable and productive yield.
So year over year, really, when you consider that map, last fall when we were here, you kind of took that data, you analyzed that, and now you'll make a plan accordingly for this year based on that, right?
That's correct. You see where the yields were the best, and you can optimize it for this next year's crop of soybeans.
So believe it or not, being a farmer has a lot to do with really taking data, analyzing that data, thinking about how to make a plan, and kind of doing that learning process over and over. Okay. How do you guys work together? We're getting questions about that. Do you live here, Ed, or do you just visit now and then?
Just visit as often as I can.
Okay.
No, Ed and I work quite a bit on the phone, really. There's a lot of things I want to know. There's things he's doing all the time in his plots and research and stuff. So I like to bounce a lot of things off of him and see what we can do to try to tweak that last little bit of yield out of our crop. And it's more or less a good relationship as far as enhancing what we're doing and just trying to make it better. So
it's a lot about decision support. Every day, the Bompkes have to make decisions, and I'm just there as a support mechanism to accomplish, giving them some data of what we're able to accomplish through different production practices, and he picks a practice and then runs with it.
So, I mean, you sound like you're just a coach. You're the farming coach, right?
Coach Ed, that's right.
Coach Ed.
Coach Ed.
So that's great, and it's really important to me to consider that, because when I think about farmers, I might not think that you're reaching out and working with people from different industries to support what you're doing every day on the farm. So it just seems like any career you choose, you have to be able to have those communication skills and be able to work together. Great stuff. Well, lots of other questions coming in. Specifically here, Ms. Paul's class from Mountain View Middle School. And Ms. Paul's class, they have a little situation, okay? We're going to see if we can have your advice support their situation, if you will. They're trying to grow tomato plants, okay? So, this is a common activity. Lots of schools, classrooms will do this kind of thing in their room. But their tomatoes, well, the leaves keep turning brown, so they try to cut off the dead leaves, and then continues to wilt. They're just not sure what's going on. They've been watering it. What else could it be that's keeping that tomato plant from being successful?
So a lot of the issues that happen with a tomato plant are real similar to the crops we grow at the Bompkes. It's all about nutrient balance, and the more balanced the nutrition program is for a particular crop, the better its ability to withstand diseases and insects and deal with being able to put on more fruit and getting additional yield.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure that relates very much to what you're doing here on the farm every day. So, Brian, can you explain what is that process for applying nutrients?
What we do, we put a starter fertilizer on our planter, and that's kind of to give the crop an extra little boost early in the spring. And what you're seeing right now in the film is that's a injection system. We have a little wheel back there with notch blades on it, and that stream coming down there, that's our starter fertilizer. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, and zinc. And we'll put that on just to give the crop a little extra boost to get it out of the ground. And sometimes it goes towards yield, sometimes it doesn't, but it always adds to the bottom line when it's getting out of the ground. You need to have a nice, healthy plant starting off.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to learn that the nutrients are coming through a liquid form.
Right.
And so what about spacing and things like that? I mean, how do you know where to put it, how deep to put it?
Well, we want to put that injection 2 by 2. We want to stay away from the seed because you can injure the seed. Some fertilizers have a high amount of salt in them, which could injure the seed. So it's 2 inches aside and 2 inches deep is where we place it at in that particular application.
Okay.
So.
Wow, things I never knew. More questions coming in, specifically about what we were just talking about, kind of bad soil. You mentioned when we showed that map earlier how you might have some soils that basically kind of need to be improved. So the question is it possible to make any soil, no matter how bad, is it possible to rejuvenate it or to make it a better soil?
So I'll take that. And there's always a lot of production capability that you can accomplish with the soil. A lot of it comes back to providing the right amount of water. A lot of our soils are productive enough if we add some nutrition and add water. For those soils that are very good, like the Bomkes have, we don't need to add water. The environment is always usually pretty good, and we just need to balance the nutrition at that point. So the production practices for each soil really involve making sure that we've got water there to bring those nutrients into the plant.
Okay, and we saw a lot of tractors. We've been learning about that kind of technology. Another interesting question though, do you use drones when applying nutrients on this farm?
Well, on our farm, we're just starting to get to that technology. A drone can more or less be kind of like your eye in the sky with a camera on it. And what we could do with that drone, we can scout our crop. We can see if we have areas that are kind of faded color or has stunting in the field. We can go to those areas. We can soil test. We can take a leaf tissue test. We can look and see if we have an insect problem or a compaction problem. So I think in the future, drones will be used more and more to help us as an aid to do all those things, to decide what we need to put on that crop to alleviate such things from happening. So.
Well, thank you. I now have a reason to tell my wife for why I bought that
That's
drone.
right.
Well, I might have bought one already, so at least I have an excuse now. So let's go back to our word problem. Again, in the last segment, we challenged the students that if 1 bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds and the Bomkes combine holds 400 bushels, how many tons of corn is in the Bomkes corn hopper? So get those questions in. One last opportunity for you to be able to do so. We're going to go ahead to the answer, but first let me take a look here. We had lots and lots of answers in here. Oh man, we've got tweets out there too. Okay, let's go ahead. There it is. There's the answer. The answer was 11.2 tons. Now, how did we get that? Well, we knew that it was 56 pounds. And so we multiplied that by 400 bushels to get 22,400 pounds. Remembering, if you do, then we need to transfer those units. We'd have 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. So therefore, 22,400 divided by 2,000 equals 11.2 tons. If you had that right, nice work. I'm impressed. So let's go ahead now. We're going to transition to another part of the farm. Your wife, Kathy, spends a lot of time on this, and she's in the background sometimes, but last fall when we were here, she was front and center because she runs the pumpkin patch. So let's go learn a little bit more about the pumpkin patch.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bomke. My role here at Bomke Farms is not only wife and mother of 4 children, but I also do the accounting for the farm, and I assist in the managing of the pumpkin patch that you see here. We began the pumpkin patch so that we could allow people to have the experience of coming out and picking their own pumpkins, and they get the experience of farm life. In the fall, after the pumpkins are done or have been harvested, we begin preparation for the next year. We start by replacing the nutrients that the pumpkins had used that year. We put strips down with the nutrients directly into the strips, and then in the spring we plant oats. Once the oats are planted, we let them grow. they're cut and they're laid over to act as a bed for the pumpkins. Once that's done, then in those exact strips that we put the fertilizer, we come back and we plant the seed. So the seed's able to reach the nutrients as quickly as possible. So once the seeds have been planted, you can see the vines that grow. This is the first thing that you'll see. Once they reach maturity, they'll begin to develop flowers. There are two types of flowers on a pumpkin plant. We have what we call the male flower, which is a longer stemmed flower. It has the pollen inside of it. It sticks up, it comes up first, and then the female flowers are produced after that. What happens is the bee goes into the male flower, collects the pollen, and then places it into the female flower. Then you can see the fruit that begins to develop. You can see that right here on the bottom of this plant. There's that little fruit, which eventually will become this size and then become a full-blown orange pumpkin. It takes about 4 weeks from this size to a mature pumpkin to be able to ready to harvest. We grow over 50 different varieties of pumpkins at Bomke's Patch. Right here I have an example of a few of them. This here is a white lumina. This is a pretty large white lumina that they usually don't get quite this big. Right here we have a mountain king, and we also have, this is a wolf jack-o'-lantern. People like the jack-o'-lantern, the wolf jack-o'-lantern, because it has such a big, huge stem and it really presents well on a porch. This is called a fairy tale. Most people will associate this with Cinderella and her carriage. This is what her carriage looked like, and people love to decorate and stack pyramids with these types of pumpkins here. Over here we have a different color of pumpkin. This is a Gerardelle, and it adds a nice variety of color to a display when they put it in their front yard. So these are some of our favorite pumpkins here, and we do sell quite a few of these at the patch.
So welcome to the set, Kathy. So glad that you could join us.
Thank you for having me.
I learned so much from watching that. I didn't realize that all the different, I mean, I see the pumpkins around, but I didn't realize they have different names. So it was a wolf jack-o'-lantern, right?
There's the wolf, yes.
Okay, the
yes.
wolf. Another one, hold on, I need to look at my notes. White Lumina, that was the other one. White
yes,
Lumina,
yes.
yeah, that one stuck out to me as well. Looks like you have maybe the most fun around here, because you get people coming to the farm, right? Like,
yes,
you get to interact.
I do, and you know, I do believe I have the most fun. Without a doubt,
Well,
without a doubt.
we're so excited you can share with us. And there were a lot of questions. Even earlier we mentioned a little bit about weathering and erosion. So we wanted you to share a little bit. How does weather impact the activities here on the farm?
Oh, wow. Weather is everything to a farmer. You know, it can affect our planting, our harvest, and even how much money we make in a year's time. You know, you've heard that old saying that you can't control Mother Nature. Well, we've learned that you can't. But what she has taught us is that we need to learn to adapt and make changes when necessary. For instance, if our pumpkins get delayed 10 days, 2 weeks because it's too cold and wet to plant, then we know we just need to mix up the seeds a little bit and add some varieties in there that don't take quite as long to mature, and we'll have pumpkins. Kyle, the thing is with farmers, all we can do, whether we're planting corn, soybeans, or pumpkins, is give that seed the best possible environment to grow, and from there, it's up to Mother Nature.
There it is. Well, it also goes back to having a good plan, because I can tell, learning from everybody here, you have a pretty good plan around here. You know what you're doing. You're not just kind of guessing in the dark.
You can't just jump out there. No, you
Yeah.
have to have an idea.
Yeah, there's a little bit of planning involved, but you know, that's a so let's talk specifically about erosion, because that's something that the students are learning about as well in school, about the impacts of weather and how erosion can, well, especially for farming, that can have a pretty big impact on what you do around here. So what do you do? What kinds of solutions do you come up with to curtail that?
Here on the farm, we use a cover crop. And what you're seeing now on the screen is what we call ryegrass, and that's a field farm cover crop. Here at the patch, though, we use a different type of cover crop. It's called oats. It not only helps us with the erosion, what I can say is we maybe recycle the oats, because what we do when we get ready to plant, we cut them off and lay them over, and then that's a bed there for the pumpkins. It's a little bit of protection from the soil and the dampness.
Okay, well, thank you. And as the students can see, and we'll see in just a minute, we have all kinds of props and materials here. Really, it's because when we think about it, the nutrients are so important, but the soils are important too. And the soil here on your farm in Illinois, it's a lot different than the soil even where I'm from, back in Pennsylvania, right? So, you know, can you share anything about that?
Well, that's right, Kyle. Soils are all across the United States are all different. And our soils in Illinois are quite a bit different from the farmer's soil in Florida.
Okay.
So They're all different.
Okay, well, we actually have a special guest here, Haley. If Haley wants to come on over, Haley's going to walk us through a little exercise. And first, I would love for you to share with everyone out there, what is your role here? How do you support soil science?
Sure. Well, like the Baumkes, I too am from Illinois, and I am the Illinois Regional Representative for Nutrients for Life. So what that means is that I get to work with both students and teachers in helping provide resources all gauged around plant and soil science. So whether it's presenting at teacher workshops, attending student events, or just here answering questions for them, I'm here to serve as a resource.
Great, and we're really excited that you brought different soil types with us. In fact, we have some students that are going to learn with you today, and maybe this is an activity that they could do back in their classrooms afterwards, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're gonna take off for a little bit. We'll welcome the students, bring them on over, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Come on over. So I want to have you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, your names, where you're from.
I'm Erica. I'm from Pattonville in St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm Max, and I'm from Pattonville in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right, well, Max and Erica, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you
We
for
are
having
going to be, yeah, absolutely, we're going to be doing an activity here looking at different soils. And as we know, not all soils are created equal. They vary in their composition, but it's something that's so important to farmers because the type of soil that they have depends on what type of crop they can produce. So, as you can see here, we have lots of different kinds and they have different compositions. So what makes up a soil? There's 3 different particles. There's sand, silt, and clay. So if we were to take soil underneath a microscope, you're going to see that those 3 particles are different sizes. So Max, you want to grab that volleyball? Erica, I'm going to have you grab the tennis ball and ping pong ball. And we're going to say that the volleyball represents sand. It's actually the largest of the 3 particles. And the tennis ball is going to represent silt. So if you compare the 2 balls, there's a big difference in size, right? And I'm holding a ping pong ball, and that's going to represent clay. That's actually the smallest of the 3 particles. So there's sand, silt, and clay. And that's part of what makes up soil composition. Now you also have something called organic matter that can change your soil a lot. Does anybody have an idea what I mean by organic matter?
Yeah, that's like healthy stuff.
It's healthy stuff for the soil.
Yeah.
So technically, let's go ahead and set these balls down. Organic matter is plant, animal, and insect materials that have actually died and are decomposing. So as they break down, it's returning back to that soil, and it's that decomposition process that's adding nutrients back into the soil. All right, so let's go ahead and dig in our soils here, guys. Okay, so we're going to start with our first one. We have soil from New Mexico. And I want you guys to feel it, get your hands dirty. Tell me what you guys notice about this soil from New Mexico.
It's real sandy, like
Yeah,
we're
it's
down
like
at the
sand.
Right, it's sand from the beach, right?
Yep.
So if you can tell, what do you guys also notice about the color?
It's really
beach.
light.
Light brown, like it doesn't get much rain, but a lot of sun.
Right,
Get the
so
color out.
this soil is very light in comparison to, say, the soil from Iowa here. It's very, very sandy. Now, do you guys think you'd be able to grow plants very well in this?
No, not very well.
No, not very well, because sand has a hard time holding the nutrients in it. So if you wanted to grow plants in this, you'd actually have to add compost and fertilizer to it to amend it in order to actually grow good crop with it. And so what we've done here is we've taken our jars where we've added the soil samples to it, added water, shook them up, let them settle, and over time that sand, silt, and clay will separate from the organic matter. So if you look at this soil from New Mexico, you're going to notice it's mostly all sand at the bottom there, right? Yeah. You have a little layer of silt, and then you have just a very little layer of clay. Now soil, it can be a bad thing if you have too much of one. So for example, if you had too much clay, clay likes to really hold on to the water, and it actually makes it difficult for the plants to get the water as they need it. So then it's separated out, and this soil sample actually is quite a bit of organic matter for such a sandy soil, I noticed. So yes, you would definitely want to amend it with some compost and fertilizer if you're going to grow plants in that soil. Now the next soil is Iowa. What do you guys notice about the soil from Iowa?
Well, that's some real dirt right there.
It's real dirt right there, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys think plants would grow in this?
Really well.
Well,
Really well. So it's good soil structure. There's quite a bit of sand, silt, and clay in here. Iowa, it's one of the biggest crop producing states here in the United States.
Shout out to Iowa,
Shout
man.
out to Iowa. So they have some really, really nice soil. And if you look to see how it's separated, you can see a good layer. It's got a nice thick layer of sand, but then you've got a lot of silt and just a little bit of clay up top. But if you look, there's quite a bit of organic matter as well, right?
Yep.
So that's good for the soil. It's a very nutritious soil. It's great for growing crops and vegetable gardens and things like that. So the next one, we're going to travel north. And this soil is from Alaska. So what do you guys notice about this?
It's like wet sand.
Wet sand. It's real
Right.
sandy still.
Yeah.
Right. It's very, very sandy. It kind of reminds me, and it might be because it's partially wet, kind of reminds me of like that kinetic sand that you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
play with, right? So it's very, very sandy soil. You can also have something called permafrost in it, which is soil that's been frozen over long amounts of time. And if you look at the jar here, you're going to notice that sandy layer does have a little bit of silt and has a little bit of clay, but this sample actually doesn't have a lot of big pieces of organic matter along the top of it. So you might want to amend it with some compost and fertilizer. And also sometimes because of the colder temperatures up there, you need shorter growing crops because they don't have a very long crop season. And the next one, we're going to get our hands dirty with this
Oh,
one.
yeah.
So I want you guys to dig in. Don't be afraid. This soil's from Arkansas. What do you guys notice about this soil?
Real sticky.
like-
Don't
muddy.
be afraid.
It's like
We've got
clay.
paper towels to wipe your hands. It's like clay. So if you've ever played with clay before, this soil is going to remind you of clay for sure. What also do you notice about the color?
It's
real
a
light
redder.
brown.
Right,
It's got a
like
red
a brown,
tint.
reddish tint. So it's got a reddish tint because they have some wetlands in Arkansas. This soil actually has quite a bit of iron in it as well, but it's really sticky, full of clay. Do you guys think crops would grow very well on this?
No, not very
You
well.
can do it. If it's your home personal garden, you might want to definitely add your compost or fertilizer to it. We mentioned cover crops earlier. If you were to put a cover crop over it, that cover crop's going to loosen up the soil where the old roots were. It'll make room for the new crop to go in. So you definitely might want to consider that. And if you look to see how it's separated out here, you've got a layer of sand. If you can see that in there. You guys notice that?
Yep.
Quite a
Then
bit.
look at this huge layer of clay compared to the other soil samples we've seen.
Wow.
And there's some organic matter at the top, but you definitely would probably want to add some material to this in order to get some good crops out of it. And then the last one here is potting soil. Now, potting soil isn't something that you're going to dig up out of the ground. This is something that you're going to buy in a bag at your local store for your home personal garden or potted plants.
My mom too makes me carry those all over the yard.
All right, well, that's great. You're helping with the gardening then, but what does this remind you of?
Mulch.
Mulch type.
Kind of mulch. There's some bigger twigs in it.
Yeah.
You've got some vermiculite in here. So there's been additives added to this to help it hold water, to add airspace to it, as well as this is very nutritious. There's the right mix in there for that. So you're going to be able to get really great plants out of your potted plants and things like that. But if you look at the jar, you're going to also notice it's separated out. But what do you notice about the top here?
There is a ton
lot.
of organic matter.
There is a ton of organic matter. So like we said before, a lot of organic matter in the potting mix. So guys, I want to thank you guys so much for helping me out with this activity.
Anytime.
Yes, absolutely. And as you can tell, not all soil is created equal. The only way to know what type of soil you have at home is to have a soil analysis done. And even if the results come back poorly, you can always amend that soil with compost and fertilizer.
Great, this is fun, guys. I'm a little jealous. I saw this ahead of time. I'm going to start digging and playing around. But
You
I would
wanted to
never
get your hands
yeah,
dirty, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So before the show, Haley, these guys were picking out questions that they specifically wanted to ask you, questions from other schools and classes. So guys, are you ready? You want to ask your
Yes.
questions? Okay.
Go ahead, Max.
Miss Kelly's class in Pennsylvania wants to know, is soil found near coastal areas different from soils found near non-coastal areas?
Absolutely. So there's more than 75,000 different types of soil found in the United States. And so those that are found near coastal regions are going to be different from soils, say, found in the Midwest. If they're near a coast, they're generally going to be more sandy soil.
All right, thank you.
And Erica, you had a question too?
Yes. Miss Gorby's class in Ohio was wondering, does all soil need to have bugs, worms, and humans to grow and produce vegetables?
So bugs, insects, humus, all of that's needed for healthy soil. You're going to find that soil is a natural habitat for those. You're going to find worms if you dig up in soil. They help aerate the soil. Those bugs and insects and all that fun stuff, that's what's going to actually help add more organic matter in the future. So as they die, decompose, that's going to add the organic matter and help it be healthy soil there in the future. And actually, if you were to take one scoop of soil, you're going to find more microorganisms in it than there are people on Earth.
Wow.
So kind of a fun fact.
Quite a bit.
Lots to learn here, yeah. Well, more questions coming in. Gina at Columbus Jewish Day School in Albany, Ohio, wanted to know how can a small school, they're kind of small, they're starting out, but they really want to know how can they practice environmentally sustainable methods, especially regarding their soil.
Okay, so even if it's a small garden, you're going to need to know what type of soil you have. What is it lacking? So if it's lacking nutrients, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, you're going to want to find out how much and how much to put in there. So you get your results back, it's going to tell you how much, so you have healthy plants, you don't put too much or you don't add too little.
Great. Okay. Well, the great news here is if you want to learn more, there is a free resource. You all can go ahead to this right after our show here. TheScienceOfSoil.com is where you'd like to go. And so when you're there, you can go ahead to the Not All Soils Are Created Equal Digital Challenge, and it'll walk you through the different soils of the U.S. So it's broken out by regions, and it's an interactive map, and it highlights those different soil types, the soil makeup, the crops that are best suited to each of the soils, the nutrients that are necessary for healthy plant growth. So all kinds of information, more learning that you can do at thescienceofsoil.com. You can even sign up for updates and so forth. So if everybody, oh, I was going to ask you to come join me on the screen, but they snuck up right on me. Guys, we wanted to thank you first off for being here. We've learned so much from each and every one of you, but I do have one more question. This is for the Bomkes. Kathy, Brian, what's your favorite part of your job?
I guess the favorite part just being my own boss, when Kathy lets me, that is.
No, honestly, Brian and I have talked about this several times. We absolutely love what we do. We like working with our family. We like being able to plan for the future farmers, the farmers coming on the farm. And it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle, and we absolutely love that.
Yeah, and we can tell that you do. You're totally committed. We've been thinking about all the people that you invited here just today. So this is great.
Yes. You know, and we want to thank all the students for coming and learning with us today. We've had such a wonderful time doing this, and we just want to say thank you to all.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good rest of your
Thank
day.
you.
See you later.